Hey, Bridge Parents, thank you so much for joining us for another one of our Bridge Parents podcasts. Today we have Dr. Dina Bowen with us today. She has been our kids' doctor. You'll see Doug here on our next episode, and I believe that you were also Doug's kids' doctors.
Yes,
and
they're grown now. It's crazy.
So tell us a little bit, how many kids do you have? How long you've been a doctor? Just give us a quick.
So I have 3 girls. If you're in my practice, you see the pictures, but they are grown now. I mean, we are empty nesters for a good long while. So they are Sarah, Hannah, and Gabby. They are 31, almost 28, and 25. Wow. So they are off in the world doing grown-up things.
How long have you always been a pediatrician?
I've always been a pediatrician. I graduated medical school in 1994 and then started my residency. And after I got out of residency in 1997, we moved to Nevada for a year, and then I came to UConn. So I've been in UConn since 1998.
Yeah. So I remember you were there when Cooper was born, and with Ramsey, and so it's been a lot of fun. So obviously in our world today, they're really, we're not going to get political or anything here, but since COVID, you hear all these different things about
it's a very confusing time to be a parent.
And you don't know who to listen to, and then so it's like you have your favorite Instagram person you listen to, or TikTok, or whatever. So we're going to kind of focus on health, and then in our next episode, Pastor Doug is going to talk a little bit about just some general parenting thing. But overall, from when you first started, it sounds like in the mid-90s to today, what is the difference you see in the health of kids?
We are seeing more chronic health issues. So we are seeing kids with asthma. We are seeing kids with type 2 diabetes. When I started medical school, if it was on a test that you said, can kids have type 2 diabetes? If you put yes, they're like, you have learned nothing here. You fail. And it was unheard of. It was not something that we had kids having. And now we do have kids, even as young as 8 and 9 years old, being insulin resistant and having type 2 diabetes. It used to just be the type 1 diabetes, which is what we call juvenile diabetes. But it has more to do with an autoimmune response that your body has where it affects your pancreas and you don't make insulin. But this other one is just truly type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle kind of illness. And so what we see is the kids that are gaining lots of weight, not exercising, and eating more of these processed foods. And so that breeds insulin resistance, which then leads them into the path of diabetes.
So do you feel like most of what you're seeing health-wise is because of inactivity, just more unhealthy lifestyle?
There is a lot of unhealthy lifestyles and inactivity that plays into this. We know that with kids with asthma, if they exercise, they have less asthma attacks. And that seems counterintuitive because you think, oh my gosh, I don't want my kid who has asthma really running and making them cough and all of that thing. But the better cardio fitness that they have, the better off they are with their lungs because it's all interlinked. And so one of the good things that we tell kids with asthma, if they're really having trouble, like they can't play soccer or that sort of thing because their asthma is giving them too much trouble, we tell them, go swimming, have them swim laps, get them on the swim team, get them doing that. And then as they build up that good cardio fitness, then move into the sports that they want to play, like baseball and soccer and basketball.
So I want to come back to some of that, but we're talking about some of the things that we hear a lot more, and maybe this is just because of what has been in the news. We hear a lot more about autism and those things.
Yes,
are you seeing more of that than you used to do? Are we just better at diagnosing that than we used to be, or is there really something going on? This might not. We might not have enough time to get in all that.
I think it's a little bit of all things. We have changed our diagnostic criteria for autism, and so we are calling that quirky kid that we all knew in high school. I think of one that I had in my high school that even at high school, he kind of sat in the back of the classroom and he drew tanks all the time. And he was just an odd guy. Now we call that autism. When I first started out in medicine, what we called autism were those kids that we see where we can identify them at the store, at our church, at our schools that are nonverbal. Seem to be agitated easily. They stim, so they kind of do these things with their hands or, wander around in circles and do that sort of thing. So clearly, that is an autism type thing. So we have broadened our criteria, but also we are seeing things that that our activities can cause some of these autism things or worsen a kid who has the tendencies for it. So if we see the kids that are on the electronics all the time, we have all kinds of studies now that show that that changes brain growth and development. And so that changes their social interactions with people. And so you see these kids who can't talk. There's jokes on the Instagram talking about, the teenagers that they can't call in and order like pizza, or the moms are trying to train them to call the doctors, and they're just freaking out. I can't answer the phone. I can't talk to people. Well, that's all because we're not allowing them to be social. And so when we're always on our electronics, or we're giving kids a phone and giving these young kids the iPads, and they're not talking and playing with their peers or with their families, then we just see them not developing those social skills. And so if you already are quirky, and maybe you're going to have a tendency for some of these sort of autism syndromes, or autism, like we call it, the spectrum, so you can be pretty functional or not going to be functional much at all in the world, but if you have someone who's pretty high functioning, but then you don't ever develop those social skills, you continue to hamper them. But we do call a lot of things autism that probably aren't true autism, but we don't have a true diagnosis for it. But some of it can be, we know that if we limit screen time, if we immerse kids in being social and doing things with their bodies and moving their bodies and playing with other kids, that we see improvements in all these skills.
At what, so it's, I think you kind of answered my next question, was to be some of these, the diabetes and some of the things that you used to not see that you see now.
Yeah.
Is that strictly, you probably already touched on it, what is the cause of that?
Really, the cause of that is our diet and that we sit around. When in the 70s, when you got off your bus, you dumped your backpack on your front porch and you ran around. You played with your friends.
Last time Cooper had his well check, you said something to me. You said, I think he's growing like kids used to in the 70s.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
So what I meant is he's an old-fashioned kid. So he's not a kid he's an active kid. He goes and does things. And so what we see in our growth charts now is that because the kids don't move, and because we have so many snack foods. When I was growing up, chips were expensive. I remember it was so exciting when we had like sour cream and onion, but you only had those for big things, a birthday party, a slumber party. It wasn't something that you had every day. And most kids, if you pack their lunch, you put a thing of chips in there. And when they come home from school and they have their snack, they have some Oreos, they have some chips. They may have some gummy worms, or even, our fruit roll-ups. They used to be made from real fruit. The ones I had were fruit leather, and you could see the seeds and the peel in the fruit. And now it's just
So how does that
candy.
affect the growth?
So what that is you have an excess amount of calories. You aren't burning calories, so the kids just continue to gain weight. And when you gain weight, our fatty tissues make hormones. So they'll make estrogen and they make other hormones. And our fatty tissue, if you have an increased amount of it, then you will see these kids getting insulin resistant. And so you'll see that insulin resistance. Sometimes you'll see that they get dark right here on their neck.
Can that cause them to grow faster? Or
sometimes it will make them grow faster. So our bodies, oftentimes they want to do something good. So if you're getting a whole lot of calories, sometimes what will happen is that your body will kind of grow you up taller. They try to utilize that well, but it doesn't make you at your end point be taller than you would have been. You're just taller faster.
So this might be okay. So we'll let's talk about food for just a second. What good breakfast? We're all in a hurry. We're trying to get to school.
A good breakfast. What we know is that our cereals that we have now are just candy. If you're eating Captain Crunch every day, or you're eating Lucky Charms every day, look at the amount of sugar that's in it, and there's really no actual nutrients. So these kids are getting kind of a quick carbohydrate that it ramps up their sugar, so you get your insulin that comes in to bring your blood sugar down to normal, and then they plummet out because they don't have any, they've already used up all their carbohydrate and all of their energy. So then you see them being, down or really grumpy. You'll see behavior problems with kids who have low blood sugar because they feel not good, and so they'll act out, or these kids that you see. If you're a teacher, you see the kids, they just lay their head on the desk and you're like, what's wrong with them? Well, they had not a great breakfast. You want to get them some protein. So you can do, scrambled eggs is good. So you can do scrambled eggs or boiled eggs or some yogurt.
I feel like my whole life it's been eggs are good, eggs are bad, eggs are good,
eggs are bad. Here's the deal. This is my personal opinion. If it walks on the ground and it grows on the ground and we don't have to manipulate it a lot to make it be a food source, then it is an appropriate food source.
So what about juices?
Juices are not great. Those are a treat. And so juices are, you're much better served to eat an apple than you are to have applesauce and apple juice. So every time that you do something to that whole food, you decrease its nutritional value, and then you refine the sugar in it. So if you eat an apple, you also are getting your fiber in there. Yeah. So fiber makes you release your insulin more slowly, and it keeps your blood sugar levels more kind of moderated. But when you do the juice, all you're getting is sugar and water from it. So like
green tea, your diet green tea.
Right, diet green tea is fine, but what you want to look for is that oftentimes with our diet green tea, does it have a lot of aspartame in it? Because some kids don't do well with aspartame.
So milk, so really good old milk.
If
we're going to go buy milk for our kids, do we do the vitamin D?
You know what? There is some controversy with that. Initially when I started in med school, and even when my undergraduate degree is in nutritional sciences, we talked about that we've got to get lower fat milks. Well, what we have found now through some studies is that milk fat triggers a reaction in our body that releases hormones that tells us we're full. So we call that satiety. So we feel full. So one thing is that in the 70s and in the 80s, we just drank whole milk, and you didn't see these kids being so heavy, and, by our BMI, we would consider them obese. And so we didn't see that. And now there's some discussion about, do we think that some of that comes from taking that milk fat out of their diet, so they never feel full, so they're always trying to eat something to feel full because we stopped that chemical process in our body. I like what you said,
so just if it grows, God made it, it's out there.
Yeah, if you have to, some people say if there's more than 4 ingredients in something, you shouldn't eat it.
What is a big no-no that you see parents do when it comes to food, and you're like, oh, I would not?
It's the fruit snacks. The fruit snacks, I see it in my office, and the kids may have 3 things of those fruit snacks. It is no different than giving your kids gummy worms. And you wouldn't feed them 3 packets of gummy worms at the doctor's office, but because it says fruit on it, but it's really no different. It's a gummy worm that you added some vitamin C.
What are a couple, so you get home after school for a snack? What are some things that you've seen that are
super simple? Have some yogurt. And you can throw some fruit in the yogurt, or you can throw a little granola in the yogurt, or even just, what kid doesn't like mozzarella cheese sticks? Okay. And then you can get fancy with it, and you can do a mozzarella cheese stick with a little piece of ham rolled on it. But those sorts of things are great. And I'm not saying no kid should ever, that you can never, ever have a fruit snack, but you shouldn't have fruit snacks every day and multiple packs of them every day. Okay. So, also just saying, maybe we'll have a little bit of peanut butter with some apples. Kids love to dip, anything in peanut butter.
So a good old peanut butter and jelly. I guess the jelly's probably not great. But
you know what? It's all in moderation. We're never going to, we can't say we're never going to have birthday cake on a birthday, or you're not going to have a cookie, on Saturday, or we're not going to have, Friday night pizza. But if every single day what these kids are having is they're having a Pop-Tart for breakfast, they have a Lunchable for lunch, you throw in some chips for that, they come home and have a fruit snack, and then they have Kraft macaroni and cheese for dinner, or you're swinging through, Burger King or Wendy's, or I don't know. We're in Yukon and Mustang, so it's a chicken place, isn't it? And so that every single food that they've eaten for that day is a highly processed food. So when you highly process it, what you do is you increase your sugar content and you decrease your nutrients. So we know also by the way that we farm that the nutrients just in our tomatoes are not the same that they used to be back in the 70s and 80s, because it used to be, like your big food companies just say you're a ketchup company. You would buy your tomatoes from this small farmer and this small farmer and this small farmer. Small farmers take care of their land. They love their land just like they love their children. I mean, it is a part of their family, and so they take care of it, and they put things in it to give good nutrients, and they rotate their crops and they rotate their soil. Well, when we have big farms, what happened is that these big food companies bought up all these small farmers, and so they just are growing, and they don't take that nice nurturing care that you do. So we can take like a tomato, and it won't have the same nutrients that
so is it worth it to Brandon and Doug are here. They're going to laugh because I'm going to say the word organic. Yeah. Is it better to do some of that stuff?
It sort of depends. Organic doesn't necessarily mean, we think organic means you haven't used any bad things in your food. Organic, now the government has come in. I would say organic is better than just not organic. But what you're really looking for is you want to make sure that it's no pesticides. Or like when we're doing milk for our kids, we don't want to have milk that had growth hormone in it and other hormones and that they used antibiotics. So when you look for those kind of things, you look for no hormones, no pesticides, no antibiotics.
Gotcha.
That with our meat. Now, clearly food prices are very high, and so it does make it very difficult. But what I tell people, if you have a young kid who's a milk drinker, that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that their milk is the best milk you can get them, because they're drinking a lot of it, and so that's where you can run into trouble.
Are vitamins worth it?
You know what? There's controversy back and forth, and so what everybody says, if you're eating a well-rounded diet, you won't need vitamins. Nobody in America really, by and large, is eating a well-rounded diet. As much as I try, I mean, I was running late for this, and I had some beef jerky on the way in. You know, that's not the best thing in the world. Was it better?
Fruit snacks.
I know, it wasn't fruit snacks. But, you know, we are a society that's on the go, and we have more in Oklahoma. We used to, I don't know if we are anymore, but we used to be the capital. We had more drive-through fast food restaurants than any other state in the country per capita. And I don't know if we've been beaten by that, but we're a drive-through kind of culture. And so we aren't every day eating.
What's a good vitamin?
Yeah. You know, just a Flintstones chewable. The gummies are not great. The gummies don't have a ton in it. The dentists hate them. They're bad for their teeth, but they don't have all those other extra tiny minerals because they don't stay stable in that gummy matrix very well.
Gotcha.
So just the old kind, you know, Flintstones chewables. Centrum has one that's a chewable that's nice, and they kind of rotate what, you know, you have Barbie ones or they have Spider-Man ones, so they rotate kind of whatever character is in vogue right now. But just the old chewable hard vitamin.
I saw a meme the other day, and it was the Flintstones vitamin. It said, this thing got me to adulthood.
Yes, it did, and there's something to that. You know, and we also want to look at things that with the dyes. You know, in the UK and in all of Europe, you're not allowed to have these red dye 50s and the blue dyes and the yellow dyes.
So there is something to all of that.
There is something to that, and they
what does that cause?
Well, they explicitly know that in some children, not all children, that it leads to behavior problems. So hyperactivity, bad behavior, just not feeling great. You know, the kids just are not themselves. They're grumpy. They're, you know, that sort of thing. There is some discussion off and on that it causes inflammation in our bodies. Long-term inflammation in our bodies leads to things like, you know, heart disease, cancers, autoimmune diseases. I don't know that we're there yet with those dyes, but we do know that they are not great for behavior. And you'll see adults talk about that if they drink drinks or have food that has aspartame in it, that they feel foggy or that they have headaches. And so, yes, we have known that for a good long time. So we are in the works. It sounds like I've seen some things mentioned recently that the government's looking at taking that out, but it's illegal.
Wow.
You know, there's the jury's out on some things like the GMOs, on our, like the genetically modified pastas and the wheat and the bread, which, you know, initially I thought, well, isn't that cool? Because I'm a girl of science. I'm like, how cool is that? We can feed more people. We don't have to worry about things. But then I see a lot of kids who the moms are like, he doesn't do well. I think it's gluten. And so we do the tests and it's negative. And then the mom's like, I don't care what you say, Dr. Bowen. We're taking it out and the kids feel better. And so I'm not.
So you kind of have to figure your kid out a little bit.
You do, because it may just be that your kid doesn't digest this type of thing. Just like some kids can't drink milk because they're lactose intolerant. And I think that we just have not come to terms with maybe we do need to be looking at that and developing some other tests. But if your kid doesn't do well on something, then just don't feed it to him.
So I want to try to stick to our time here.
Yes.
Two more quick questions I want to hit. Energy drinks. The
Energy
Celsius,
drink.
the Alani, the Monster.
Those are terrible for kids. Absolutely.
What about for
terrible.
adults?
They're terrible for adults too, but absolutely not for kids. You know,
Is it long-term stuff or is it?
It's mostly short-term sort of things. The kids, their bodies just can't handle that much caffeine.
Gotcha.
It is too much caffeine, and I have had kids that they're drinking those for their sports and things like that, or they're staying up all night studying and they drink those and they have issues with their blood pressure, or their heart is racing and they're having palpitations, or they feel dizzy or nauseated. I've had some kids that have ended up in the ER because they're having so many symptoms from it. There are cases of kids who have very, very difficult problems with them when they drink a whole 6-pack of those during the day, and they cause themselves to go into heart failure and things like that. It's rare, but it can happen. But there's nothing good that comes from that. If you need something to keep you alert, water is your friend, and protein is always our friend. That keeps us from having those big spikes in our blood sugar.
So my last question, one of the things that I know, so my wife teaches 7th grade English, been there for 18 years. Just the sleep, how much a good night's rest is huge. A good night's rest
in kids, it needs to be about 7 to 8 hours. The problem with teenagers is our world does not work on their circadian rhythm. They just are built to be night owls. They are built to be night owls, sleep in, get up and feel great. But that's not how school works.
So let's say up to like 6th grade, how much sleep?
8 to 9 hours.
Okay. And then once we get into like, let's say, 7th to 9th grade.
They need about 7 to 8 hours.
Okay. And then same thing in high school probably?
Same thing in high school. Okay. We need more sleep than what we give ourselves.
What are there any things that you've seen parents that are, I'm assuming all this stuff in kids' rooms, their phones, their all
we need
iPad.
to, absolutely. No kid, one, for sleep's sake, but also for safety's sake. We need to have the phones, the tablets, the laptops, the computers out. We used to think we were safe. As parents, if we got our doors locked, we got a security system and set it, made sure the windows were locked. But now the bad people and the bad things come through our electronics, and we can't see that. We don't know. Your kid can be sitting right next to you texting with someone inappropriate or looking at inappropriate things or being influenced by people, not what our belief system is, and we have no idea about
that's
it.
Scary.
And so they stay up all night watching, even if all they're looking at is cat videos, that light from our electronics changes the melatonin release in our brain, and it makes you it keeps you up, and you can't sleep properly.
This has been great.
Important.
So one, I'm going to give it to you. One last thing. What's one thing, the last few months, years that you see parents come into your office, what's one thing you wish you could see that parents would change?
I think really the biggest change that I have seen besides diet is we have to get the kids off the electronics. We absolutely can. It's bad for their brain, it's bad for their mental health, and it keeps them from playing when they need to. And it influences them in a way that as parents, we don't know what's going on and we can't control. And we would really like to know what is influencing our kids. You know what? We wouldn't let our 8-year-olds take advice from somebody that we don't know, and we are allowing that. You wouldn't just let a stranger give your kid advice on whether they should do something at school or what their college career should be or how they should date or anything like that. But we're allowing people that we can't even talk to influence our kids in that way. So I think that's the main thing, because it just hits everything. It keeps them from sleeping. It keeps them from being active. It keeps them from being social. If you're on your phone, you're not playing with your friends.
Well, thank you so much. It kind of sounds, a lot of what you're saying is just kind of stuff that Grandma used to tell us.
It is. It's common sense. I'm
not saying you're a grandma.
Listen, I should be a grandma, but, some of the kids are like, you're old like a grandma. I'm like, I am. It is,
Well, thank you so much for giving us this advice. I'm excited for this, and then Pastor Doug's going to be talking to you for another podcast too. So thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.